Howdy all. Happy Thursday. It's a nice, sunny, warm day in Buffalo, which drives me nuts because I hate hot weather.
Don't worry, Mike. You only have about 45 of those left.
I don't know, 45. He's got like 10 of those left. That's Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that I like, when it comes into the next season, like in the early September, it is
really nice up there early September. I agree.
Yeah, it's like 65, 70 degrees. It stays that way all the way till I'd say early to mid-November, and then the evilness comes in, and then we're screwed until February. Okay, Russ, go ahead.
So, in case anybody hasn't heard, Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, I want to say it was the day after the All-Star game, or it might have been the night of.
It was the afternoon of the All-Star.
Thank you. Afternoon of the All-Star game, comes out and says, Mike Trout is a great star, but he could be a bigger star if he really pushed himself on social media and in other ways. And I don't know if Rob Manfred knew how badly this would backfire on him, but I did the minute I heard it, because as a hockey fan, and first as a writer second, and listen, Kevin was writing during the John Ziegler era, and I was ranting about how they didn't market anybody in the NHL back then.
Yeah.
MLB doesn't market anybody anymore. And this is a problem with getting, millennials interested and a lot of other fans interested in the sport. You don't see ads. You don't see anything that sort of you don't see it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. You don't see things that are engaging you to watch baseball. Mike Trout is probably the best baseball player I've seen in the last 20 years. And he came out in defense of himself and basically said, hey, look, I do what I can. I don't have a ton of free personal time, and that's what I do. And then the Angels defended him. And I just think this was a failed move by Manfred.
Didn't he insinuate that he was boring or something like that?
I didn't insinuate he was boring. He just said he wasn't applying himself like on social media to engage more with the fans. If he engaged more, he'd be a bigger star.
I mean, Kevin, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the criticism of Sidney Crosby back in early in his career, when people were like, well, he's not out there. He's the greatest player in the game, but he's not exciting. He doesn't give a lot. He gives interviews, but he's sort of bland and boring. And I'm like, who really care? Do I really care if Austin Matthews is a boring interview? People in Toronto care about the fact what he does on the ice. I don't think they care about what he does in interviews.
Well, I would get several points on this. First of all, if he was playing with the New York Yankees, we wouldn't even be talking about this.
Sure.
Because he'd have more exposure. But part of the problem is that he plays half of his games after a lot of America goes to bed.
Right.
And what they know about him is what they see on the MLB network the next morning. And that's just an issue. And that's just the way, life is. Willie Mays, played for the San Francisco Giants, and, Mickey Mantle was on every Saturday baseball game, so there's, even though those two players were very comparable players, Mickey was the far greater player because he was playing in the metropolitan area. But the other issue that to me that was bothersome in hearing that story is that, we can't have it both ways. Like when guys are too aggressive on social media, then we're all over them,
right?
Saying, and even guys who sort of do it with good intentions sometimes face a backlash because they're engaged with being self-promoters. That's too much about them and not enough about their team. So I feel sorry. Like, I don't know why an athlete would go on social media, because mostly only bad can come of it. Unless you're donating $10 million to charity,
right.
I don't know what you can say in social media that doesn't cause some kind of issue for someone. So, could Mike Trout do better in terms of engaging with fans at the ballpark? I don't know enough about him. When you're a star of the game, there is an obligation. Like Wayne Gretzky, in my opinion, was the absolute best of understanding that with stardom comes an inherent responsibility to kind of sell the game. And he really understood that. And that was something his father drilled into him. And he did his part. And, when he in the 1980s, when he was such a superstar and he was bigger than the game itself, every city he would go in, he'd hold a press conference. That was just expected. And, he would talk about, the fact that he, had 215 points or, what the Oilers were doing and so forth. And, I think today's athletes have less of an understanding of their importance than the athletes of old, because now the sport seems so big and the money seems so great that it feels like you don't really need to sell it. But we all know, and I'll give you the best example just at my newspaper. We used to have 5 baseball writers, and we have 1 now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just a reflection on the newspaper world. That's a reflection on the baseball versus the other sports.
It is a reflection. Go ahead, Mike.
It's interesting how social media has an effect on sports and on reporting, because of the instantaneous nature of it. And I can go back to early yesterday morning, when this Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan trade in the NBA happened. DeRozan, who says that he was told by Toronto management that he would not be traded a few weeks ago, finds out he's being traded, goes on Instagram and basically, not talks trash, but, basically says, I was told something, they've lied to me. I guess this is the way the sport, that he was, it was direct and it was immediate. It wasn't like you learned about it 24, 48 hours later in a press conference or after the guy had a chance to calm down. He was pissed off in the moment and he went on social media and talked about it. So, I think that's sort of in a way the negative side of social media, because normally you get a chance to calm down when something like that is going on. And in this instance, it's already out of the bag.
Great point.
It is. My feeling, just the last part about baseball, and Kevin's right as far as, how the popularity's dropped, but this commissioner's really done nothing to promote the game either. And he took over basically what Bud Selig had done, and he tried to implement a few things, but he hasn't gone beyond what MLB has tried to do in an outreach. Like, perfect example is, you were in Washington, and I felt like that All-Star game was as small as can be. And until it actually happened, the home run derby was great, and actually the All-Star game had a great ending too. But everything leading up to it was minuscule. The only coverage I really saw on Twitter of it were local DC radio and TV people saying, hey, we're getting the All-Star game. Like, it's just, there's so much of an opportunity to do free events and things with these ball players, to let them meet the public, take pictures. Even if you had like a selfie event before, home run derby with the guys, do things like that would have the outreach. Don't blame the players. The sport's supposed to market the players.
Well, to your point, Kevin, Aaron Judge is not exactly the most ebullient, exciting guy. He's a good guy. He's, young guy, 25 years old, I think. And he's in the biggest media market with the biggest team. And it's like, he's not on social media. He's not doing everything that Manfred is saying. It's the fact that he's with the Yankees. He doesn't have to sell himself. Being on the Yankees sells him. So
that's exactly right. There's a momentum with the Yankees that carries everybody. It's a wave that carries everyone kind of along. And I think that's true of several teams. I think the Boston Red Sox have a wave now. So whatever that, they're washed over. But, it's a very complicated thing. Like, I do agree that the baseball needs to do more, and they really need to sort of get with the times and sort of be more interactive with the fans. But some of this is just not anybody's fault. Mm-hmm. We are now in a generation where, kids have kind of grown up with far different interests than, Russ and I and you grew up with. And, some of it just, isn't going to be changed with all the marketing in the world. Now, that doesn't mean you should give up, and, you shouldn't, as Russ said, do more with the use of social media and, selfies with players and players on billboards and doing everything you can to try to save it. But, you can't defeat the fact that today's kids have grown up with video games and not running down to the fields and playing pickup baseball. I mean, where do you see pickup baseball anymore? You just don't see it. Where, in our heyday, you played from light till dark, and that they just don't have that. In fact, their only hope is that some people learn to love the game by playing video games about the game. So.
Well, to be fair, we used to play light till dark. I played light till dark softball yesterday, 6 to 8, a doubleheader, and I'm dead. So I can't even do that anymore, Kev.
Yeah.
I went to the gym. I went to the gym 2 days in a row, and I feel like I'm ready for the dirt nap.
Speaking of that, I saw an article not long ago when it was listing about all the sports that are dying, and one of the ones that is dying is softball. In my, early in my adulthood, you couldn't find a field. Like every field in where I was, even when I lived in the DC area, they were all booked up, and there were leagues galore, and there were softball cities everywhere. And now even those, softball's dying. They listed all the sports that people don't participate in anymore. Bowling, when I was a kid, was a national phenomenon. Everybody was in a bowling league, and everybody bowled. And now it's dead. People used to water ski. Nobody water skis anymore.
Bowling could die. That's fine with me.
Pardon me? Yeah. Well,
Bowling I'm okay with that.
But bowling was a, in terms of notoriety in America, was as big as they come. They had Sears used to have a ambassador, and the baseball guy was Ted Williams, and the bowling guy was Eddie Lebansky, from Michigan. And he was on par with Ted. So it's just a different world, and I know that's part of the issue here as they're trying to sort out. And we've talked about this before too, about the NBA. Trying to come to grips with the fact that, so many people now are on their phones during the games, and they're trying to figure out what to do about it, because it's become an issue. Because the fear is that eventually people are going to say, why do I even go to a game when I spend half my time, on looking at my phone, checking my social media and so forth. So,
and this is a concern for all sports is sort of the lack of attention span of the viewer. I mean, we know that MLB is trying to, because games are what, Russ, about 3 hours. Is it they average around 2.5? Yeah, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And it's not just Los Angeles where people get it there in the third inning and leave in the seventh. It's, you see people leaving major league ballparks when they're paying $70, $80, $90 a ticket. They're leaving in the seventh inning because they want to beat the traffic and they're not involved or enthralled in the game. And that's dangerous.
No, that's true.
Here's the issue about that, though. The people that we are reaching today, they're not the problem. Because we're all hardcore fans. We hear start to finish. We're interested. We're not. Some of us journalists are on the social media more than we should be during a game. But for the most part, they're totally into it. And they're not the problem. But the casual fan, the people who are not watching us today, those are the issue that they have to deal with, because you need those in order to have a vibrant sport. You need the casual fan to help pay the freight to kind of carry the load. So,
All right. Well, let's start the show. I should be here any second here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, July 19th, 2018.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen from USA Today Sports.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Wanted to start with something we talked about yesterday, Kev. We were talking about salary arbitration and players that were looking for new deals. Situations like Mark Stone in Ottawa and Jacob Trouba in Winnipeg, where and lesser extent with Winnipeg, because it seems like Trouba is willing to stay there if the Jets will pay him, but they have so many restricted free agents, guys like Blake Wheeler, whose contract is up at the end of next year. They have a lot of, they have $20 million in cap space, but they have a lot of guys to sign. So getting Trouba on a reasonable number is a big deal with him. And Mark Stone, obviously the Ottawa situation, you don't know whether he wants to stay there long term or if he wants to get out of that madhouse there. But let's start with Trouba. I mean, you would think that the Jets want to get him locked up 7-8 years, but the figures that came out in the arbitration, Winnipeg, the team offered $4 million. His agent asked for $7 million. So it doesn't seem like there's any kind of narrowing there. Seems like it's.
But they, everybody kind of knows where these arbitrations go. So teams usually lowball, and agents tend to go a little bit high. So we kind of know where the number is. It sounds like the number is going to be in the 6, to 7 range. $6 million range, somewhere in there. And he's. What he does, those guys are rare. It's just a matter of how much you want to pay him to do that. But he's become an important shutdown guy for that team. And from his perspective, he now looks at this. I mean, this is going to be, as we all know, a great Winnipeg team. Like, this is going to be a top level team.
It will be.
So there is every reason in the world for him to want to be a part of that. But there's also every reason in the world for Winnipeg to want him, because they don't have guys who can do what he can do, and so for that reason, I think this will get done. And arbitrations are almost never get played out; they always get settled. And there's obviously exceptions to that, but I would think this will get settled at some point. And I think everybody kind of knows where the figure is. I think that's far less problematic than out of a situation where you're absolutely right. If you're Stone, you got to start thinking, okay, how long is it going to take? If once we lose Karlsson, if that's a foregone conclusion, how long is it going to take for us to be competitive again? And there's the arena issue there. Folks are unhappy with the organization. That promises to be messy for a while. So he's got some hard decisions to make as well. I'd be far more worried if I was an Ottawa fan than a Winnipeg fan. And
he's 1 year away from unrestricted. So if he goes to arbitration, takes the 1 year, then immediately he's
right.
A lame duck. He's a rental. I mean, because if he wanted to sign the long-term deal, he would have signed it as a settlement before the hearing actually happens.
Yeah, and he would become. Is he already the number one rental? For next year, can we just call him that?
Will be. I'm assuming he will be. Yeah.
Well, him or the guy that Russ is going to bring up now might be the number one rental. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, this guy could be too. So it's come out. Sportsnet reported that Artemi Panarin gave a hard date of September 13th to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He will not discuss his contract after that. Look, they're in trouble. Unless they offer him something ridiculous like $10 million a year for 8 years, they're going to lose him. Like, it's just, he's been wanting free agency, and unless he gets stupid money, I can't see him staying. So this is not good news for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Let me pose this question for the panel to discuss. And really, I have no inside knowledge on this, but now when we look back, we were all struck by how odd it was for the Blackhawks to trade Panarin. Did they see this coming?
They absolutely did, yes.
Did they just think, I know there was concern about that he was going to be hard to sign, but did they think this was going to be this messy?
I think you're onto something, Cap. I really do.
I think they did know, yes.
I think they recognized. I mean, first of all, they had knowledge of the type of player that Saad was. They knew him because they drafted him, because they had him for a couple of their cup runs. So they knew what they were getting back. But there was cost certainty there. Saad was under contract for 4 more years at the same cap hit that Panarin was. And anybody who looked at Panarin at $6 million said, as a UFA, if he kept going the way he was going to make 8 or 9. And I didn't know about him wanting to be next to a body of water, but you knew that he would want to hit the jackpot. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it even goes beyond the money figure. I'm just talking about just the the personality of the player, because you remember, like, they had perfect chemistry. They being Kane and Panarin, like they were Sundance. And it was perfect, and they dealt him. But now it seems, when in hindsight, that they said, we won't be able to deal with that situation. And because now this is a tough spot. Now he's a talented player, but are you going to get full value for him if you trade him? I don't know.
I mean, not at all at this point. And hello, everyone. By the way, hi. You guys can hear me?
Yep. I
wasn't sure. Yeah, I just spoke. Sorry about my.
We're just on a roll. That's all.
I know. I apologize. You're on a really good roll. I didn't want to jump in there too much. But yeah.
And Ek, you reported earlier in the week that there might be something to the Blackhawks trying to get Panarin back, and if that's.
I had heard that, but I talked to people, and then the same thing kept coming up. I think I may have even talked to Kevin about it. The assets aren't there for Chicago, right, to pull that off.
Well,
So, I mean, that's the big problem. So they won a lot for him, obviously. I do think that the Blackhawks would, especially for Patrick Kane's sake, like him back. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I do get a sense, like I talked to somebody relatively close to the situation who said, listen, I mean, think of it, you're a Russian guy. Think of it this way. You're a Russian guy. You come over here. You start off in Chicago, a big city. It's exciting that there's the glitz and all this stuff and the glamour. And then you go to Columbus. It's not as fire. It's a different kind of place. It's a great town. It's an awesome hockey town. It's a lot like a Canadian. I heard somebody compare it recently to a Canadian town in a lot of ways, which it is kind of. It has a Canadian feel to it. Columbus does, in its cleanliness and it's like in the kind of the way that people are. It's got a real like cool, smaller city type vibe to it. Not too dissimilar from like say Calgary. You take away the the other mountains.
The oil derricks.
Right, but at the end of the day, Columbus is a different kind of town, and if you really like the whole Chicago scene and you want to be back on some kind of major city, and you have the ability with your contract to do that, at some point, it's kind of a tough sell for them. I think that's where they are. I think they have to move him. I don't think they can sign him. I think the date is a weird one in some ways.
No, it's the day before the opening of training camp.
Right.
So what he's basically saying is, if I come to training camp, then I'm going to be a rental. I'm not going to talk contract. I don't want to be bothered during the season. My fate is sealed. Now, I don't think he's got any kind of protection in terms of no move or no trade.
I don't think he does either.
Yeah,
they can trade him anyway. So if you're Columbus and that happens, you can't get anything done by the 13th, which you're probably not going to get anything done by the 13th, right?
Right.
It happens. What are you going to do next? Like,
well, it won't be next. I think they'll try to trade him before. I think they'll try to trade him this summer because that's when you get your best deal.
Well,
I don't know, Kev. I mean, I think there's a chance they're going to end up keeping him and seeing if they have a legit cup team, and then if they figure they don't, then they'll trade him at the deadline.
I mean, this is a dangerous game to play, Kevin. But they've got Bobrovsky and they've got Panarin, both UFA at the end of this year. Do they do one of these things where, okay, there's enough money for one of you guys, the first one that jumps gets it, and the other one is going to be gone at the deadline or gone, just leave?
No, because Bobrovsky's too important.
Yeah.
He's more important. And Panarin is a great player, and they are. I mean, you're right, Russ, in terms of the fact that this is a team that's pretty close in some. I mean, they were the closest team to knocking off the Capitals in a lot of ways. So
but don't you think? And I'm posing this question because I understand exactly what Russ is saying, but don't you think they have to get real-time assets back? And by that I mean, guys who are going to step right in the lineup and be significant, as opposed to, usually when you do a rental, it's futures.
I agree with you, Kev, but the problem is you do have two of their best players, arguably their two best players, in the same situation, and we don't hear anything with Bobrovsky's contract at all. And so, this is an impossible situation if you think about it.
But
let's go down this path too, though. Let's discuss about. I mean, to me, and obviously Bobrovsky's in a special category, but it doesn't mean it's not easy to be an unrestricted goalie because you're so limited to the availability of spaces, and I mean, on any given year, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 teams that are looking for a goalie. So it's not the same market as you have for defensemen. So it's always risky. The double for a goalie, in my opinion, is better than
a lot of goalies available still at this point. Go ahead.
Well, but I think in Bobrovsky's favor are the last 2 contracts of starting goaltenders that got signed. Hellebuyck gets 6.1. Fleury, now when we all said Fleury got 7 because they have cap room and they rewarded him for doing what he did last year, but still that sets a bit of a benchmark. Now Bobrovsky's making over 7 now. I mean, and he's won Vezina trophies and been the center of that team. He's going to expect to get paid probably close to what Lundqvist is being paid.
Yep. But that's the problem, though. I mean, if they won't give it to him, I mean, can he be certain he's going to get that? Now he's a high quality goalie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you got to have the right fit.
Well, I can think of 2 teams right off the top of my head that that have aspirations of being better in the next couple of years that don't have what I would consider an A1 goaltender, or maybe 2. The Islanders, 3. The Islanders, the Sabres, and the Blues.
I'll throw another one in there. that's really close to home for Bobrovsky, and that would be Philadelphia. I mean,
yeah, Carter Hart's a year to 2.
I know, but I know he is.
Yeah,
I know.
you're not thinking.
I'm not saying they're going to get him and all, but the Carter Hart thing. The more you talk, the more you wonder how long this is going. So I mean, I think they're bringing Bobrovsky back, but I've also heard before the Panarin thing started, I had heard that they were not happy about where they thought the Bobrovsky thing was heading, like as far as the whole number goes and how much. I mean, they love him there and they realize how good he is, but at the same point, there is going to be a limit to what they're going to pay him. So there is a spot at which you wonder how much credit they give him versus the team versus versus everything else, right? So
or how sold they are on Korpisalo to be to take over as the number 1, and a lot of people think Korpisalo is capable of being a number 1 in the NHL. So I mean, but
if you trade Bob before the season starts, you're thrusting him in there, so you're not going to do that. No. Are you really? I mean, the only way that they're trading both these guys, if they know they can't sign them and they're not in the playoffs, right? But if it starts the season and neither of them are signed, and we're getting in January and they're in first place, they're not going to be trading them.
I don't think they are either. I don't think they're going to trade either of them. I think they will sit and because because this is a team that wants to do something in the playoffs really badly. They're close to being a good team. There is the feeling of like, okay, if things go incredibly well, maybe Panarin will want to stay. Maybe he'll want to stay if things go incredibly well. Who knows? That's a possibility.
Right.
You get the cap space, like you always say, Kevin. If you lose him for nothing, you do get the cap space back. If you have a good playoff run, you have a good playoff run, and that this is a team that more than anything needs that. They need a good playoff run. Like that is above anything else. This is a team that has not had any success in the playoffs. They're a good young team. They were 1 goal away from pretty much putting the Capitals out last year in double overtime of Game 3, right? So they are that close in their minds. But so, and also the GM here, the GM you're talking about, he's the kind of guy in Columbus that I could see just saying, you know what, we own your rights. We have your rights. We'll figure this out. I mean, you're going to be, we're going to keep you this year. You have to play for us this year. And we're going to go from there. And it's just, and I think I can see him very much being the kind of GM that just says, we're not going to sign you. We're going to play you. And we're going to hope that because you really want a big contract, you're going to play an unbelievable season, and which he probably will.
Yeah, but that's dangerous.
Oh, of course it is. But when you weigh the positives, when you do the pros and cons list in front of you, remember the biggest thing is that they have a good year. Right. The biggest thing is that they go far in the playoffs.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that requires both of these guys we're talking about to be there.
Yep.
Unless they could make a legitimate hockey trade. Right. Like if they could make a trade where they got back, if there was a team, and I haven't even looked at this or asked about this, but if there was a team where they needed an offensive fire starter like Panarin, and they could get back a player that would serve their needs as well, or 2 players, then maybe it would be better to trade them now. But otherwise, I see all of your points. The only problem with today's game now, it's so hard to predict. Like, you just said something which it made me chuckle because, you said they were 1 goal within 1 goal. Well, the Senators were within 1 goal.
I know.
Doing that, and the next year they were a disaster. So those arguments now have become ridiculous.
I'm so I've literally made it a point to say how sick I am around this house about every time I hear someone say on the radio that the Senators were 1 goal. Well, I'm saying, as I laugh at myself for saying this, I just think that Blue Jackets are a better team still moving forward.
They are, but the Senators didn't look so bad. That they looked like they had figured it all out then. If you think about it, they had shut down defensemen and Mathot. They had a great offensive guy. Their offense looked good. Turris had looked good in his role. They didn't look so bad. And even the Columbus Blue Jackets were 27th. Like I joked last time with Kekalainen is that, they've become like the Sharks to me. Every year I try to figure out the Sharks, and I'd always be wrong. If I was bullish on them, they wouldn't be good. And if I was said, well, they're just not the team I want them to be, then they'd be great. And that's what Columbus has been the last 2 years. I thought they were going to be great, and they were 27th in the league.
But, and this is the last thing I want to say, you just named the team that they could do it with. But I think the only team I can see that sets up well for this is San Jose. That San Jose has Yeah, for Panarin.
Yeah.
They're going to make a hockey trade. San Jose has the young players, the young talent.
I think there's another team, Mac. I think Tampa, because Tampa is overloaded at forward. They have guys locked up on long-term deals, guys like Johnson, guys like Killorn, who give you cost certainty. They have a boatload of young prospects, and they're clearly, if we buy into the Karlsson stuff, they're clearly trying to win it now, win it in the next 2 to 3 years. So if they're doing that, then
as good. The players they would get rid of, as far as Johnson and the guys you're talking about, are not as good as the players that could potentially come from San Jose, in my mind.
Well, who do you think?
When you look at San Jose coming as runner-up to John Tavares in some ways, right? And that
Who do you think San Jose could give up?
Yeah, exactly.
What was that?
Who do you think?
San Jose,
I was looking at. I'll be back with that. I'll go.
San Jose's not going to trade Hurdle. They're not going to trade Timo Meyer. They're not going to trade their. I don't think they're going to trade their young guys. They would probably
have to. They would have to. You're looking at. They would have to trade one of those guys.
Yeah, but that's only if they felt like they were going to win this year, Eck, because it's a rental. Like, look at.
No, but this is like you get permission to extend. They would get permission.
But he's not going to extend. He's going to go to free agency and then interview with everybody. That's what he wants to do.
But San Jose. This might check all the boxes for him. This is a competitive team.
In that instance, Eck, San Jose and Doug Wilson are better off holding their fire, keeping their prospects, waiting a year, and getting them in free agency.
Maybe. You might be right.
The biggest problem is he was their leading goal and assist guy, and nobody was close. Where are they going to? They need to get 2 players for him if they're trading him. Otherwise, just trading him will be too much of a loss.
Oh, yeah, you got to get a couple things. You got to get a couple pieces for sure.
Yeah, I think it could help. But yeah, San Jose, it's interesting about that team, though. Like, when you look at that, they have all the elements. Like, they got the goalie. I think he's a good, solid, dependable, top 10 goalie. They've got the defense. They got a difference maker on defense, and Brett Burns as well, and they got the offense as well. So, like, they're not like they could go for it. I agree with Eck on that. Like, there's a reason in my mind for them to do that. So
yeah, they were close, and although they have scorers and they do have offense. I'm trying to think who they would have that you would put in Panarin's world. Like, who is like that? I don't think they really have that. They have a balanced scoring.
Well, they think they have that now in Evander Kane, because Evander Kane.
That's a big question.
I know, but they're the ones who signed him.
Evander Kane's a different type of player. He's got some bite to his game. Yes. He's a power forward type guy. So that's a different thing. The one thing about Panarin is, he's got that dynamic element to it, where, he's always a threat to, make something out of nothing. There aren't as many guys left in the league that can make something out of nothing, but he's one of those guys. So,
and I'll
get one of those since, like, say, Teemu Selanne in San Jose. Marlowe has those moments for sure, but he's not exactly. He's still.
All right, I'm going to give you the guy.
Before you give me the guy, I'll give you one more team that I think fits, because they really struck out if they were even in on Tavares, but they fit all the criteria, and they've supposedly been looking for that 1-year rental, is the Boston Bruins, and they've got a ton of prospects.
Sure, but they definitely need to insert somebody now that is going to make up the scoring gap. So, Eck, since there has been no extension yet, you throwing Joe Pavelski in the trade?
That could. Because you're. I don't think you do, because he's such a part of that culture.
But that's what it's going to take to get someone like Panarin.
I think it's going to be more like Hurdle or Tierney. I think that's where you're looking at. Plus something else. When you look at their scoring leaders, okay, you guys know off the top of your.
For who? San Jose? I'll look it up.
No, don't look it up. I have it. Don't look it up.
Couture.
I want you to guess who their top scorer was this year.
Oh, okay.
I would not have guessed this.
Yeah, I still think it was Couture too, but I guess it was somebody else.
67 points, this player. That's not a lot. Again, like I'm saying, they're not like, this is not like a Panarin. They don't have a Panarin on this team.
No.
He played 82 games, 67 points in 82 games.
Hurdle did have a good year. It could be
Hurdle was their fourth leading scorer.
What, Brent Burns?
Hurdle had 46 points. You know that? Their fourth leading scorer, 46 points.
Who
So we're
was
not
the
talking
leading
about, again,
Who was the leading scorer?
leading scorer is Brett Burns, which
I did say that. Okay.
Okay, you said that, but you think about it, because he didn't score a lot of goals this year. I was thinking, he's probably not there. But 12, he had 55 assists.
Yeah, so
Second is Pavelski with 66 points. Third is Couture with 61, and then it drops to Hurdle at 48 and Tierney at 40. So I mean, that's your top five scorers.
But the point is that they're in a position where they can't afford to give up players that can play for Columbus right now to get a player.
You can give up Thomas Hurdle for Panarin. I mean, absolutely. Why would you? I mean, you're getting Panarin.
It's too much of a step down. It's not enough.
Go ahead, Kev.
No, it's not enough. You got to give up like a first round draft pick or something else for sure.
They're not going to take that. That's the point. They want that. What Kevin says is right on.
You're looking at a guy who's not going to sign there, who's like definitely out of there.
That's getting a first round pick and a top prospect is a package that's more attuned to a rental at the deadline. They would rather keep Panarin the entire year and get close to possibly making the playoffs and then trade him in September for a first round pick and a prospect. You need tangible assets before the season if you're going to trade him.
Yeah, although Hurdle obviously is not. I mean, he is both a futures guy and a current guy. Like kind of crossed over now into being a guy that can be a player. So, again, we don't know how San Jose feels about Panarin and whether he's right fit for their dressing room and all that. But it is it's a horrible dilemma for Columbus.
Well,
this is a terrible situation for them to be in.
And Kev, I mean, we've talked Karlsson to death, but I need to go there for a second because I'm of the opinion that now, I mean, we've heard that Tampa's still, sort of going back and forth with Ottawa, and whether that's true or not, nobody really knows. But I'm of the opinion now it's that getting a deal where he's going to sign an extension is almost impossible, and that this is more starting to swing toward teams like that will trade for him for the 1 year and not try to get the extension because it's just too difficult. He's getting too close to free agency where he can hit the home run. Why would he want to sign the deal unless it's a perfect scenario for him? And
I wonder whether the Tavares situation has sort of changed everybody's thinking as well, because that, when that first the Dog and Pony show, when that first started, I remember people laughed at it and said, "Oh my gosh," nobody liked it. Now all of a sudden, the way Tavares did it and the way it kind of came out, everybody thought, well, maybe that's the way you should do it. Have everybody make their pitches and do that. So maybe that's what Karlsson is thinking too. Well, I'm this close. Maybe I'll just have everybody sort of make their pitch next year. And you have to give up less, obviously, if you aren't going to sign a long term. Yep. So it makes some sense, and it really makes sense, obviously, for Tampa Bay. So. Yeah.
I know it. No, and they're close enough. I mean, we can make an argument that that's why Tampa's not going to give up too much here because they know that Karlsson will extend with them, and that's the one team the one team that he definitely will extend with.
And I was told that they had. That was their plan all the way through. Like they had never offered anybody.
Okay.
So that
it would make sense, right? Because they're that close, and then they can make their own decisions on who they want to trade to make cap space and stuff like that. But they can.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was just the New York Rangers. Were probably the team that kind of caused the issue there.
Yeah, the dumping zone, so to speak.
Yeah, and you can't blame the Rangers either. You don't want to get stuck with all that.
No, I thought that was kind of crazy, actually. Getting Callahan back didn't make a whole lot of sense for me.
It didn't. I mean, fans loved the idea, but it wouldn't have made sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the only argument you can make is, and I know Russ knows this, covering the Rangers, but Callahan's presence is significant.
It is.
So if you sell. If you're selling on the idea of, hey, look, we're going to have younger players, that's our deal. Like having a guy like Callahan around.
Yes.
He was, I know him well from the American program where he's very revered. Like all the American players look up to him. They love how he plays. He plays 100 miles an hour. He gives you everything he's got. The problem is what he has to give is less than it used to be.
Yeah, he's the second most popular captain the Rangers have had in the modern era, and that's domestic. I mean,
he's a significant player, like in that regard, and always well liked. And you need players like him to win. The problem is, you're paying more now for him than his value is, and how much assets do you give up. So, you can certainly make a case that the Rangers, should have had some interest in him, but not without getting what they want in return. So
yeah, just so you know, the chat room's saying trade Wayne Simmons for Panarin, but there's no way Columbus is trading Panarin to Philly. It's not going to happen.
I wouldn't think so. And I don't think.
But Wayne Simmons is another scenario. A similar scenario. 1 year left, and with the signing of Van Riemsdyk, I seriously doubt, unless they can get him for the number that Hextall wants to get him at, that they're going to be able to sign him to an extension. So is it one of those scenarios where he's a rental at the deadline, or they trade him before the season, or they just play it out and let him?
I think he'll go as far as the deadline with them. Hextall has not lost any assets on any player that I can recall that's worth anything to that organization. So based on that, I think he will go until the deadline, and then Hextall will look and see how they're doing. And if he feels like they can live without him, he is going to get something for him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think they'll have no problem playing out the season with him if they're in the playoffs. If they're playing well and in the playoffs, they'll just go for it.
I don't know. I'm already dreading having to sort out the division, and you go on, because that's when I take the most abuse. Got to sort out that. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat, but oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable how people get.
I remember how stressed you were at the World Cup of Hockey working on this. Remember this?
Yes, because when you're a national writer, people really do pay attention to what your projections are. And in the old days, I had this funny response where I would just send and I've mentioned it before on the show, where I can't remember now the exact figure, but it was the head of the Las Vegas Gaming Commissions who said, we make $3.4 billion a year off people who actually truly believe they can accurately forecast what's going to happen. And I used to send that out to people whenever they'd give me grief on it. But, now we're in a different era and you can't really do that. But, I've been thinking about that division. The only good news is I'm pretty sure we can say that the Islanders, minus John Tavares, are not a threat to make the playoffs in this division. Unless they do something dramatic. And I'm not a Robin Leonard guy. So,
yeah, I'm not either.
The
only thing I'll say about that, Kevin, I said this before on here, is I said, I hate to make predictions on teams that have gone through the stuff that the Islanders have gone through this summer.
Yeah, no, I know, because the minute I say that, and the Islanders folks who are pretty vocal, they'll be all over me about that. Because I have believed.
The Islanders fans are like, great, put that, say that, so that they get another person saying they'll do terrible, and that'll get them even more fired up to be good.
But the team, you put a gun to my head right now. The team that I think's on the way up is the Philadelphia Flyers. And the team that I'm going to worry about, just in terms of, will the hunger be as strong, will be the Capitals.
I think that's fair.
Pardon me?
No, I think that's fair. I was also saying that the chat room, Thomas in the chat room was saying that he feels like the Islanders would get Panarin, but if it gets to free agency, the Rangers will outbid the Islanders. They will.
Well, you would think, but the Islanders have so much more money.
Yeah, but they won't spend it like the Rangers will. They could talk about doing it, Ek, but they won't do it. Nobody is there that would want to.
This is the Lou Lamoriello that got the Devils to put that contract in Copenhagen.
No. The Devils forced Lou.
It
was the Islanders won't force Lou. I mean, because the Islanders are going.
They won't have their arena yet. They won't. It won't be. They're waiting for that arena to spend that kind of money. That's what they're doing.
They also need to have players in place to make that arena.
They'll do it that season. That season leading up to it. I'm telling you, that's their deal.
Possibly. I mean, I think that I think that we are. I read about Simmons a little bit today, and the only thing I've heard is I think they will play it out. I do think they'll play it out, unless they're just terrible, not in the playoffs, which is the point they would move him. But I think the team to look out for them is if they don't get Karlsson is Tampa. That's what I was told. So if Karlsson doesn't, now I know I've heard other teams mentioned too, but of course I've heard Vancouver mentioned, I've heard Toronto mentioned, I've heard Buffalo, I've even heard Carolina mentioned with Wayne Simmons. But I think the team, if they don't get Karlsson, or if for some reason they, for whatever reason, if they don't get Karlsson now and they decide that they just can't sign him, and I think that we all think they can sign him, but I'm just saying that this is the day they like him. That's what I was told. So for what it's worth.
Following the Open Championship, Tiger Woods just lipped out a putt and he just bogeyed. So
darn.
There you go.
You're not a Tiger Woods fan?
No, I'm a lefty fan. I always have been.
Can I throw another name out there? I'm going to throw another name out there that I've been looking into a little bit over the last couple of days, and that is Varlamov.
All right.
Okay. Now he still has a year left to go on his contract at like 5.75, and then he's a free agent next year too.
Right.
They went out there, and we know that they went out there, and they traded for Grubauer, who doesn't want to be a backup. Remember, he's leaving Washington, and Washington said they would trade him to someplace where he wouldn't be a backup. They give him a chance to, and so then they extend him for 3 years, right? They give him a 3-year deal, like 3.75, whatever. And I don't think he's going there to be a backup to Varlamov.
He's not, but the thing is that they really have nobody behind. Now, if they trade him, maybe they get a goaltender from the other team. But the thing is, I think the plan there is it's a 1A, 1B scenario, and we know Varlamov has had injury problems the last few years. So I think they'll split it down the middle, or as close as possible to the middle, and then Grubauer is the starter next year. And maybe if they're sold on Grubauer at the deadline, they trade Varlamov as a rental. But I don't think they're going to. I don't know if they're going to trade him before the season.
And that's exactly what Joe Sakic said at the draft, and he's been kind of a man of his word.
Yeah.
He basically said that he felt like we'll bring them both in. We're both plan on playing a fair amount of games, and we'll see what happens. And but other than that too, like I don't sense any great romance with Varlamov in the marketplace. Like I don't think that people would be tripping over themselves.
No, I agree with that.
To bring him in, it would be
my and I think there are going to be plenty of teams at the deadline, that are going to be looking for that goaltender, and if he's played well. I mean, I don't know if Colorado is going to trade inside their own division with St. Louis, and based on there's a history between those two clubs in terms of trading and everything. But I mean, if Allen falls short, that might be that, or would they be interested in Bobrovsky? If Bobrovsky's a rental, sure. Would it Varlamov? I mean, there's going to be a number of goalies out there, so I would think all these teams, if they're competitive, but they think they need that to solidify in net before the deadline, that Varlamov will be a candidate, and Bobrovsky as well if they decide to trade him.
I mean, plus you never know quite what's going to happen. I mean, like you look at the top teams, if anybody gets a significant goalie injury.
Right.
If Vasilevsky got hurt in Tampa, I mean, that would be catastrophic.
Right. Oh, yeah. The top teams.
Yeah, Tuukka Rask got hurt in Boston. You look at all the good teams. If any of those major teams had an injury and Bobrovsky is sitting out there, oh my gosh, that'll be fun at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I think that will be fun.
Kev, it came up in Forbes magazine a couple days ago. I wanted to get your input on it. Andrew Burraway, the owner of the Coyotes, is said to be selling or trying to sell 49% of the Coyotes, and he's asking for $500 million, which if right now the expansion teams are going for $650. You would think that 49% of an existing team, especially one with the history of the Coyotes, would be in the $300 million range, but he's asking for $500 million, and he's not even selling a majority stake in the team. And I mean, I know it's because they have a ton of debt, but again, this is just the perpetuation of the struggles in Arizona. And I keep thinking to myself, how long will it be that this team survives there?
Yeah, I've always been bullish on the idea that Arizona was going to be there, because I know Bettman's history. I've spoken to him about it, and they work too hard. But now we're reaching the point, like they're running out of options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the hardest thing to sell is minority ownership. That was Peter Karmanos' plan too.
Yeah.
Karmanos was only going to sell a minority interest in the team, and we all know where Peter Karmanos is today. He doesn't own the Carolina Hurricanes anymore. And
that kind of money without any control, like that's like,
Right.
Yeah, no, that's right. And all that gets you. I remember Bruce McNall and the Kings said, when you're a minority shareholder in a team, all that assures you is a good seat at the game.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's
But you know what's funny, Kev? The other thing that I think is a key thing if you're trying to sell this minority ownership is to have a stake in the actual arena, which they don't.
Well, they don't have it, and that's the other thing. There's no good arena plan, and there's none on the horizon. Like, and
that's what hurts the deal.
Everything is a mess there in Arizona. Other than I think John Jaika is doing a good job, but
right.
It is, and I mean, doesn't that say that they think that if you're selling half the team for $500 million, that's essentially half, right? That's what you want to get. Doesn't that say that the team's worth $1 billion?
Yeah, that's right.
Which it's not.
No. So I don't know whether he's going to be able to get that accomplished, but we all know from every level of negotiation, not just in sports, is everybody starts high and they whittle away at it, and so who knows what'll happen? But there's something's got to give there. Either they got to get a legitimate, and I know there were some plans at some point about getting in a Native American reservation type situation, and they've talked about going back downtown, but it doesn't seem like there's any plan that's even close to being finalized. So
I mean, the Arizona State thing fell through. They were talking about building just outside of Scottsdale. I think that was the one with the Indian reservation gambling connection. That's there's been quiet as a peep. So right now, and they don't seem to want to work with the Suns to share a building. So I mean, and we were talking yesterday about Houston is there, and we know Seattle is going to be the expansion franchise, and Quebec City is basically sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for a team to come to them. So I mean, there are options. It's just,
but I still think that I'm telling you, that Toyota Center is shaky, thinking you're going to put hockey in there. I don't think that's a guarantee. I don't.
What are we talking about?
The Toyota Center in Houston. Like, supposedly they can put hockey in there because they renovated it, but we don't really know that. They've never tested it. They've never had a hockey game played there, to my knowledge. I know people that live down there.
About it being another Barclays Center.
Yeah, I don't think it would be that bad, but it could be.
Well, like that was a real misread, the whole Barclays Center. When you look back on it, I went back and looked at my story. It's like everybody thought this could be a good thing. The big concern was whether the Islanders fans would come. Like that was the real concern. Yeah. Were you going to alienate your old fan base, and the whole business you were going to get a new fan base out of Brooklyn? But there was no discussion about that it would be a disaster logistically as a building. And lo and behold, it just didn't work.
Yeah, it's a problem when you have a Honda Ridgeline blocking your view in the lower.
Yeah, no, that's right. But it is interesting, and that often, even in this modern world, like it doesn't always evolve. The way that you think of it. I mean, Eck brought up something when the salary cap first came in. There was a lot of discussion about the importance of cap space being an asset. There was, general managers constantly talking about that. I remember Brian Burke was the first to talk about it, that, cap space will become like an important commodity that could be dealt and so forth. The problem with all that, and he goes, you got to view it that way, is in the fan world, that's not the case. Like now, like how many times have we heard a team saying, well, be criticized because they didn't get anything in return. Right. And so easy for us. And I believe it's still important. Like if you lose a guy, if you lose Bobrovsky, you have that cap space that you can get somebody else to go in there. But that's not how the fans see it. The fans see it as you lost that guy and you didn't get anything in return. So it's much more of a public relations nightmare than had been anticipated. And the other thing about that cap that I always remember is that everybody thought that there was going to be a free flow of players because you were going to draw a hard line in the sand, and you were going to lose this star, but you were going to get another star who was going to want to come to you. That has not happened in the least. I mean, it is a major event that Tavares left his team, because that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it never happens. And a lot of that has to do with, I mean, there's so many things to that. I mean, the 8-year thing I don't think is nearly as important as just players' homing instincts if they want to stay.
Well, yeah, and now other factors have become far more important, and where it's just playing where you want to play for whatever reason has become a bigger thing, because it's harder to pick. You can narrow it down to 6 or 7 teams, but it's hard to know which is going to be.
And I want to throw something on Phoenix for a second, because before we leave that Arizona thing, because I agree with what you're saying, Kevin, in terms of the fact that this has really been an NHL project, obviously, to keep the team there. I've always felt the same way. I've always felt, okay, they're not going to let this go. They fought really hard to keep it there. And yes, there does come a point at which that makes that you can't stay there forever. My question is, does the Las Vegas victory, which is like an unbelievable victory for the NHL, at all make it easier to walk away from Phoenix?
No, well, I mean, one thing that they really don't want to do is get back, that with Seattle coming in, we're now even again. We got the perfect West versus East type setup. And what they don't want to do is, lose a Western team. And, like, for example, I don't think they'd want to put it in Quebec for that reason. But I know what you're saying. I think I don't think that's going to be a factor one way or the other, because I think, Las Vegas is a special circumstance that goes beyond, Vegas is a special market. It's that's sort of a unique situation. Like Seattle, as zealous as they were as buying tickets, I don't think it'll still be quite the same as Vegas, And I think that some of the points that are being made with regard to the selling of the sport, that what Nashville and Vegas have proven is not that everybody should do it that way. It's that everyone just needs to be who they are.
Yeah,
and I think that's the key. I mean, I love, and I've said this on this show before, but I love going to Montreal during the playoffs, because there's no city like it in terms of the level of discussion. And it's all about hockey, and they don't need all the showmanship. But I also love Vegas and Nashville, and I think those are such unique places. And it took Nashville. This is the other thing that's lost too. Like, they almost lost that franchise, and it was a disaster. It took them forever, but they finally sort of clicked, and now they're great. And
because they're also really good, and there's always that fear of, okay, I mean, the thing about Nashville that they going for them, I've always said is they were on a slow, very, very slow, but continual incline to get better.
Here's the thing:
always getting better. So, like, the fans never sat back and said, "Okay, this team's going to just fall apart. We're going to rebuild." They just continued to slowly get better.
Yeah,
and that's huge, because look what's happening.
They did launch in the pre-salary cap era. I mean, and I think that's important. The Columbus Blue Jackets launched in the pre-salary cap era, and the Nashville Predators and so forth, and I think that makes a difference, just in terms of But poor Seattle, how in the world can they ever live up to what Vegas did?
No, they can't. But getting back to the Coyotes, doesn't it seem like, since Quebec has seemingly lost an expansion, that would be the place?
Yeah, it does. And now, if that happens to me, I think about, who are they going to move Columbus back to the West again, or are they going to?
They would have to. I mean, they would have to probably reimburse a team to shift.
I will tell you who I think should move to the West, and you're going to laugh at this. Okay, it should not be Columbus, because they've already done that. It should be Carolina, and I think Carolina belongs in the Central Division, because there is a natural rivalry with Nashville that's never been. Because when you look at this, these are real college football powerhouses. Like, you look, there's the Dallas, right? Nashville, St. Louis. There's a natural thing there that could actually play out in because when you go to games, there's a similar feel to Carolina that there's in Nashville. I just think that I really always
felt like barbecue sauces there.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. Just because they both can make biscuits and gravy, that's
there's a difference
No, but Tennessee,
But Ken, there is a
and
difference.
North Carolina are
in
right next to each other. Okay,
No,
they're right next to each other.
It's got to be Columbus. If Columbus goes back to the Central Division, there's still a natural rivalry with Chicago.
Yeah, I think it would be Columbus, too.
They've been too in on the Pitt Ohio State. They've been too far in on that. Like, to me, they've been trying so hard to get that going, right? The Pittsburgh thing, because Pittsburgh is so close. I think you have the same thing in Carolina and Nashville, and I think you have the same possibilities there.
And that's why if there is a transfer shift, that Houston and maybe to a lesser extent Kansas City, because they've had that building there for years that's NHL capable, but I don't know if they have the ownership in Kansas
Carolina,
City.
then one more argument on Carolina. They have not developed, to me, in my opinion, a rivalry with anybody in their division.
I think that's fair.
That's true.
Well, and the other thing about that too is that they never took advantage of the momentum they had when they won the championship. Like, if you remember, and I know Eck does, what a great atmosphere it was when they were in the cup final, the tailgating. They had their thing going too. It was a college football atmosphere in Carolina with the tailgating that was going on before the games, and it was a lot of fun. But boy, they just let that, and I think, and I'm a huge Peter Karmanos fan, but I think he bears some responsibility for that because, they just didn't build on that momentum. They stayed a low budget team, and
they have more of a rivalry with Detroit than they do anybody in their own division.
Well, that's because of their owner, because
they played them in a big playoff.
But their owner also was from Detroit, and he and Mike Ilitch had rival youth league teams for
right. But you think of, even when they were in the Southeast, because they've been in the Southeast, they were in the Southeast Division for a while, right? They played. They never got anything going with Tampa or Florida, which is right there. Even Atlanta, they had nothing going on. So.
Well, there is a lot of logic to what you guys are saying about Quebec being the place, because it's going to work in. If you're coming out of Arizona, you don't want to go in a place where you're going to wonder again if it's going to work. You don't know whether it's going to work in Houston. You don't know whether it's going to work in Kansas City, but you're sure as heck sure that it's going to work in Quebec City.
Right.
And I get that there's the dollar issue and all that, but I think all that would be overcome. I think the place would be full.
And that's the easiest place that you can move into. The place is ready. It's NHL ready. It looks great. Fans will show up. It's the natural.
And I think you'd put Quebec City in the Atlantic Division with Montreal, Toronto, Boston, etc. And either you move Boston into the Metro, or you move Detroit into the Metro, and there you go. And probably not Detroit, probably Boston, because it's the Eastern Seaboard. The New York teams, New Jersey, Philadelphia.
Don't you got to keep Boston with Montreal though?
Yeah, if you move Florida to Quebec, that changes, right? So then,
but who do you move out? Who do you move out of the Atlantic? You have to move someone out of the Atlantic. You can't. You're not going to break up Tampa Bay and Florida.
No, but I'm saying if you move Florida to Quebec, you just if.
We're talking about Arizona to Quebec.
I know, no, but I'm saying, but Arizona someplace else. You can put them someplace else, because because Florida, to me, the obvious thing is you got to keep the two Florida teams together,
right?
Obviously you got to keep them together and they're I think in the next couple of years we'll see something good with this rivalry, because they're both really going to be good. But that's forever to get going too.
We keep saying
why do we want to move Florida?
No, because we don't want to move Florida. I'm just saying that's a team that's always
safe. They're safe as long as I forget how long that deal is with the local government.
Yeah, they're getting state money, and it's a steady stream. So
they're safe for that.
Yeah,
I don't know the best team to take out. Then if you're moving Arizona to the Northeast, I don't know what teams.
It's messy, regardless of what you do. But you know what? Of all the things that you got to do, realignment, even though there's a lot of name calling and stone throwing when it happens, that's the simplest of all the things that could result from this kind of thing. So
as long as Detroit doesn't have to go back to the West, I think they'll be okay with it. Or but Boston would have a problem being broken up against Toronto and Montreal, but you could conceivably move Detroit into the Metro and get away with it if that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. What about Buffalo?
Buffalo, that's a team I think you should move.
Buffalo, well, breaking up Buffalo and Toronto, Buffalo, Boston, Buffalo, Montreal.
Yeah, no, that's right.
You got to break up somebody, and they're not an original 16. See, I like the fact that the original 6 teams are together. I think that's a big deal.
And you guys think Gary Bettman has an easy job?
Oh, I know. I know, but I think
Yeah, and it's not a foregone conclusion. We're talking as if Arizona's going to move. They're still trying to make it work.
Oh, yeah.
They are trying, but it is getting bleaker.
It does seem that way to me too. And as I said, I have written numerous times about I didn't think they were ever close to being moved because I thought they were committed to trying. But now at some point that you do have to just say, well, how long is this going to go on?
When they're openly talking about getting a partner to help get rid of debt, a lot of debt, $250 million or so, then it gets a little serious.
no,
Quick last thing, Kev. Was there any movement at all regarding the change in the playoff format, or is it? I mean, because we were talking about the 3 teams at the top of the divisions and the wild cards. Was there any talk about the change of that, or did it just die on the vine?
It seems like it's dying, but I think it's going to come up again. I have heard that there, from good league sources, that there's very serious discussion about the whole seeding aspect of it.
Okay.
Where the idea of that you shouldn't have a situation where your top 2 teams are meeting prior to the conference final. So.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a compromise to it. I mean, the top 3 teams in each division, and then the 2 wild cards, most points, and then you reseed based on.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've heard has had some serious discussion.
the only thing you can't do then is have your brackets, right?
Yeah, well, no, that's exactly right, and but Gary Bettman has been on record as saying he doesn't favor he doesn't think there's a need for a rat tail. Play-in type thing, which I think all of us, or I would say the majority of people like that idea. I know I like it
a lot, especially.
I'm going to tell you, Kev, you left out a team when you do your previews. They just came out with a quote that is going to be a headache for you, and that will be the New Jersey Devils, because they just said they're very confident in their core because they did nothing this offseason. They did nothing to change what they did and basically got in because a backup goalie got really hot and got them in the playoffs when Snyder got hurt. That's going to be a hard team to figure out.
Well, it is, but I still like the Devils. I mean, I don't. Do you think it's going to be a 4-4 this time around?
No, the only team that makes it a possibility of a 4-4 is Florida if Luongo stays. If Luongo stays healthy, if he gets hurt again and you have to rely on James Reimer, they're done.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but I don't see I know the fans in Detroit are upset about that they re-signed Green and Vanek, but I went on the radio and I said, you at some point you have to pay homage to the growth of your young kids, even if you have a young team. They're going to bring up that Hronek kid from Grand Rapids. So do you want him trying to figure out the power play by himself, or do you want him with the locker next to Mike Green, who has been running a power play effectively for a long time? And Thomas Vanek, they're bringing in Zadina. If he's going to play, they're bringing in Rasmussen.
Right.
Vanek is a great guy, and he's also a highly skilled, very effective offensive player.
If he plays with skilled players, he's a different player.
Pardon me?
You put him around skilled players, he's a different player.
Well, more importantly is they considered him when he was here before almost like a sort of an assistant coach type. He often had suggestions about the power play and things that could be run, and I think he'll do the same thing for Zadina. And I know they don't like in Detroit, but here's my point: do you think that really changed this team? No, it didn't.
No.
They're still going to be a younger player. So, I don't see them as being a playoff team. The Islanders, again, a Buffalo, had they kept O'Reilly, who knows? But now I don't see them as a playoff team too. So now we're getting.
But they're going in the right direction.
Oh God, yes! I am so bullish on that team. I love Middlestat, and Eichel, and I'm glad they didn't trade Ristolainen. So
I talked to a scout real quick, and then we'll get out of here. I talked to a scout who compared the Devils to the Vegas Knights of the East. That's what he said they are, and he thinks that the speed, the way they play, is similarities. There are some similarities. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, they are probably more like the Knights than anybody else in the East. So that's why they are definitely scary. I mean, that speed is intense, and it's worth. Now Vanek, if you look at Vanek's versus James Neal's numbers, they're really close. Like everybody who hates Vanek coming in, it's like the goals and assists and stuff like that. I think they have almost the same amount of goals, and Vanek has more assists, if I remember, from last year. I mean, so people who sit there and diss on Vanek, the James Neal derby was incredible.
True.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think in Detroit they were just mad that they felt they should just go with the kids and keep the kids space and all that kind of stuff. But I think you're discounting the importance of veteran leadership and having someone there to teach the kids. So.
He's really important to have around. That is all the time we have for today. A great show. Thank you so much, Kevin, for jumping on. We will be back again tomorrow. Now, I am wearing a shirt, if you can see. I don't know if you can see or not, but this is I just got in. So if you're a Patreon member, you'll be getting one of these. If you go to patreon.com/hockey, this is and I'll be getting you, Mike, and I'll get you one, Kevin. These are the Hockey Buzz cast T-shirts. Pretty cool. I like them. And
say my name. Am I going to get one?
Yes.
I'm just asking.
Of course.
That's your salary for August.
That's right. We'll just take it out of your salary. It's all right.
Here's the big question of the day, too, Ek, and this is we don't still know the answer to this, and even Kevin doesn't know, and Kevin might be one who gets it first. We have no idea where Jack Hughes is going to play next year. We still don't know.
Yeah, no, that is true. Yeah.
That's a good one. We're going to get into that for sure. I like it. So go to patreon.com/hockey and you and help support the show. You can get one of these. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.